Welcome to the shop. I'm Jared and this is the Questionable Garage. And right here in front of me is our very broken Porsche. This is the third car in our fix and flip series. We started with a 4Runner, had a rusty Jeep, and we now have a broken Porsche. I was told not to start it, but I went ahead and started it anyway, and it made horrible noises. Which means we gotta take the engine apart. So, before we can take the engine apart, we have to take it out of the car. But even before we get to that point, I do wanna address something because unfortunately the tuning date was a little bit later than originally planned. So we've got a couple Porsche videos before you guys get the payoff from that Ferrari video. I thought it'd be kind of fun, give you guys that cliffhanger at the end. I turn the key and we fade to black. That was kind of mean. You know what? You deserve to hear it start and run. So even though this is the Porsche episode, we've got Robin 1 here. Let me just turn the key. You can hear it run. You can get that reward. You can get paid back for all that time in the Ferrari episode, but you'll still be wanting to tune in for the tuning episode because we'll see if we can make more horsepower than a modern Camry. So I'm gonna try to do this with no throttle inputs because this is a car made for a very small person. And this may be a surprise to some of you. I am not a small person. All right, neutral. It's running. Still need to tune the cold start a little bit, but I mean, how is that for no drama? So I am thrilled with how this has come out, but today is not about a Ferrari. It's about a Porsche. Oh, see, it wanted to be quiet. It's like, oh, it's not my day. I'm thrilled with how this came out. The Holly's done amazing things for it, but yes, I have a very broken Porsche. The screaming and screeching that came from that timing set was catastrophically alarming. I'm pretty sure even though this has had the IMS bearing, the intermediate shaft bearings replaced and upgraded with lifetime bearings, my gut says those failed and it jumped timing. We don't know until it's taken apart. And then we find out if the cylinder walls are ruined. These are known for ruining cylinder walls. This is a big gamble. The only, again, rules of flipping cars. Can you escape? Can you get your money out of it? And we can make money parting this car out. But I would much rather have a running, driving, all-wheel drive Porsche 911. That's a whole lot cooler, right? So when it comes to Porsche, the thing I know most about it is we both come from the same country, Stuttgart in Germany. That's the extent of it. And I had experts tell me don't start it, and I didn't listen to the experts. But you know what experts you guys need to listen to? Today's sponsor, Aura, with their online security app. Data brokers are making fortunes selling your information to robocallers, scammers, and people who just want to learn more about you, like where you live. And that's why I'm incredibly excited to tell you about Aura. It's really easy to set up, and you don't have to download a bunch of apps to get features such as parental controls, antivirus, VPNs, password management, identity theft insurance, and more. Traditionally, you've needed 3 or 4 different services to get everything in one. They're watching the dark web for you. If there's, your personal social security number out there, they're gonna alert you to it and help you get things taken care of. They help protect your identity, and if anything is stolen while using their service, they've got a pretty substantial insurance policy to help make things right. And the best part is you can try Aura for free for 2 weeks when you use my code aura.com/questionablegarage. It's right here, and it's also in the description box. Or scan that QR code to get you over there. Listen, I have got a ton of cars to build, and I just don't have time to go out there and scrub and take care of my virtual identity online. So I let Aura take care of all of it for me, and you really should too. You can either let people continue to profit off your private information or take a really easy step. Head on over to aura.com/questionablegarage and get your 2-week trial started today and let them get to work protecting you and keeping your information safe. All right, well, before we can drop the engine out the bottom, because obviously there's no room here for it to come up, there are things we have to disconnect from the top side. And if you remember in our first walk around, this wasn't wanting to open very well at all. So we can, it makes its noise, but then it works. Well, never mind. I thought that was gonna be a whole thing, and sometimes cars are fun. So I have not pulled one of these engines before, so I'm gonna kind of just look around. We'll bring you in a little closer here in a second, and we'll start figuring it out. I know, if I remember correctly, our oxygen sensors need to disconnect from the top, and there's a couple other things up here we need to unplug before we're ready for it to drop out the bottom. But before we start unplugging too much, be safe, disconnect the battery. Well, let's tear in. Get our air box off, or at least start trying to figure out how to get an air box off. I'll tell you what, leave it to cars. Again, this thing had been just absolutely temperamental, refused to cooperate in any fashion when it came to trying to get this back open. Like, as long as I've owned this car, I've been unable to open the trunk or the engine cover, whatever we want to call this. It just wouldn't open. So I had this whole bit planned out, how I was gonna work through a bunch of different options and finally potentially be successful opening it while propping up a broom handle and lowering the car on it to push it open while I pushed the button. Turns out the car didn't want that. So I guess I could have, you know, carried on and pretended and made it look like something happened, but I'm also not a great actor. Can you come out as there we go. Look at that big old thing. I wonder if I've got room to unbolt the AC compressor and tilt it here to save from discharging. We got to drain coolant. Looks like that air line disconnects there. These two will disconnect and stay. That'll probably disconnect. Well, here, let's just focus on what we know we got to get. All right. Huh, there's one random thing not plugged in. I wonder what that goes to. Let's go up in the air and see what we got underneath. All right, let's try to figure out getting this exhaust down. If I remember, we can actually pull it with the headers, and then it's, I think, these two bolts here. We'll just start taking bolts out, right? I gotta love emissions. I just love how German this car in the sense that so far everything seems like pretty straightforward in how you're supposed to remove it. I could be wrong. There could be some catastrophically awful, horrible thing looming in the darkness about the removal of this engine. Oh, well, that would explain it. That's a nut and bolt, but you do want to remove that so this can drop down without the air pipes, I think. Now that I know that exists. Well, that one was on upside down and it broke. Well, if I undo those pipes stay behind. All right, can I get a wrench on them? Tell you what, guys, we're gonna go time lapse. I'll pick you up when I figure something out. Well, okay, let's get you guys caught up. We were doing a whole lot of little things and made some good progress. Exhaust is gone. We're draining fluids and it's ready to come out on the bottom. I have no clue what we still need to disconnect on top, but like I was kind of indicating, the Germans did a pretty decent job of making this thing pretty straightforward to remove. But once the mufflers came off, the headers and cats came right off. It doesn't look very good in there. We don't have enough light to see, but it has definitely been burning oil and fuel and a whole lot of just bad stuff. So we'll see what it looks like when it's out. We are draining coolant right now out of the small hoses. We have got our CV shafts back here removed, zip tied up. There's a big aluminum cross member gone. We've got the sway bar out of the way, and we're gonna have to fix that. Bolt got broken off, and I guess they decided, you know, it's good enough without it. It's not. You need all your bolts for the sway bar. So we'll be fixing that. Front drive shaft is disconnected. We got our shift linkage off. I found really the only other connector was the reverse switch off that transmission. So we've got those two bolts and then this cradle up here. And that's all that's holding the engine in right now. But we've got to get the rest of our hoses off. There somewhere are going to be fuel hoses. We're going to find a major bulkhead connector with all of the wiring somewhere. The two upper radiator hoses, AC and power steering. So it's making good progress. We're going to get this thing out and see how broken it is. Tony might have the right idea by putting an LS in it. Who knows? I'd rather, you know, get our Porsche engine working, but if it doesn't, supercharged all-wheel drive Porsche, or we don't do something stupid and we just sell it for parts. All right, we finally found, I think, all the connections, and we might be good to drop this on the table and get it out. So we'll lower it down, undo a couple bolts. Bed rugs it is. Well, it's a little smaller now, and you can really plainly tell why this is called a flat 6. It is, without the intake manifold, a really small height-wise engine. They're very wide. They're boxers where they punch back and forth. And there's no doubt that the 911 is rear engine. Your axle shafts are all the way up here. The engine is clearly behind them. I've got the intake, the full wiring harness, some of the other small things. I pulled the oil pump assembly, and I could go on the internet and research this a little bit, but let's just take it apart. We'll find things out. This has what's supposed to be kind of a lifetime IMS bearing, the intermediate shaft that these engines are known to have failures of. And I don't know if it's the bearing that's on the other side of this shaft right here, but it moves a ton. When I pulled the pump, it actually sprung and almost hit the housing. I don't know if that means that's the blown bearing. Porsche people, you can comment below. I'll eventually be one. But right now, we're just going to pull these coils out, and I want to pull at least this one side valve cover because it gives us a better shot of looking in at the timing chain. So, start undoing bolts. There's a lot of them. All right, I think this cover has to come off. I don't think that's supposed to be two pieces. And I also don't think I'm the one who just broke it. Oh no. Oh no. There is a lot of timing chain right here. As in, it broke. Although I don't feel like I'm the culprit of all of this, because I know the shop was trying to diagnose why it wouldn't run, and they did start it a few times on their own, so. Ah. Your timing chain should not do that. Also, you shouldn't have a bunch right here. That shouldn't do that. Also, there's more of it right here too. Oh boy. You know, normally you try to make sure things are in time before you take them apart. I don't know that we have to worry about this. Oh, Porsche, you're special. I'm curious now if I can get the whole timing set out, you know? Why not? Oh, what went wrong with you, car? Is it a broken time? Oh, it is. That's a broken timing chain. When I say breaking timing chains is not common, it really is not. It is not a common occurrence with these modern chains, and it just... Well, we'll go ahead and end it with me sitting kind of in a little bit of sadness here. We got the Porsche torn down, mostly. We started tearing the engine apart a little bit. There are some special tools that I need to get to go a little bit further, and I may actually phone a friend who knows this engine. He is what I am to the 2J, he is to this engine. So I may have him come over for us to finish the teardown. We'll get this thing completely blown apart and find out if we can even save it, and then figure out how much it's going to cost to save, because it's not looking good. The cylinder heads at least need major work, because if you break a timing chain, the pistons have probably hit valves. But that's what can happen when you're doing these fix and flips. We knew it was a very big risk in getting a very expensive German engineered vehicle that was known to have a major problem. We were hopeful it wasn't as major as it is, but you know what? We'll figure out once we finish tearing this engine down in the next episode on the Porsche if we can save it, how much it's going to cost, and where do we go from here on this car.
The reality of fix and flips. You never know what you're going to get. Also wanted to mention, some of you may have noticed there's now a join bar in the description below. I did turn on channel memberships. I've had a lot of you reach out via email saying, hey, how can I support you? Don't necessarily want to buy merch, which you should, because I think they all look really cool. We've got some cool designs coming up here soon as well. But no obligation. You guys watching, you guys liking, commenting, and sharing the video is all I can ask for you. And ever would expect or hope that you would want to do. But if you wanted to do a little bit extra, we've got a couple different tiers of memberships turned on. If you want to, I appreciate you. But again, I appreciate you even just watching and hanging out in the shop while we do some very questionable things. Very questionable. But until next time, I'm Jared, reminding you guys to always make questionable choices. And don't be afraid to jump in 2 feet first, right? Jump both feet in. At the end of the day, worst thing, you've learned a little bit. Or a lot. I shouldn't buy a Porsche.